and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. And verse 27, so God created man in his own image, in the image of God he created him. So the verse 26 has two words, image and likeness. I just believe that even though it's two separate words, Hebrew language has something called parallelism, so it actually just enhances the first, what it talks about, image, likeness. And verse 27, so God created man in his own image, and then again you see the parallelism, in the image of God he created him. So it's just a repeat, God created man in his own image, in the image of God he created him. So this is just Hebrew poetic language, parallelism. But still it's the word image that we really need to understand. So what is the image of God? You know, different people have different views of the image of God. But before I go into that, I just want to read a few more verses in the Old Testament where it talks about image. Genesis 5, verse 1, it says, this is the written account of Adam's line. When God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. Here it uses the word likeness. Verse 2, he created them male and female and blessed them, and he named them mankind when they were created. There's another reference to image, and this is the last reference in the Old Testament for the word image. Genesis 9:6. Whoever sheds human blood, by humans shall that blood be shed, for in the image of God has God made mankind. So here in Genesis chapter 9, verse 6, he says, God has made mankind in his image, so whoever sheds his blood, by name will he be punished. That's the kind of thing that he's talking about here. And this is the last reference we have in the Old Testament about the image of God. So what do we believe? Do we believe that the image of God was lost when man sinned? A lot of people think that because of Genesis 9:6, the image of God was not lost. And in order to understand whether the image of God was lost or not, first of all, we need to understand what is the image of God. You want to take us, go at it? What is the image of God? His Spirit in us? Okay.
Well, God is His Spirit.
Okay. So His Spirit in us is the image of God. Okay.
Yeah.
What's that?
We are His image.
We are made in His image. So what do you mean by we are made in His image? Oh, we are His image? Okay, so what does it constitute? We look like Him, we act like Him, we speak like Him. What does it constitute? We carry His Spirit, okay? Now, there are different views and people are trying to explain what this image of God is. And there's something called the substantive view, which basically says that, you know, we have some of the attributes of God, some of the nature of God. We display love, we display the powers to reason, we have a free will, and they call this as the image of God. Then some others say that it's an experiencing relationship with God. We have in His image, so we are able to experience relationship with God and with others. We can express it in that way. So that's more relational. And then there's another functional aspect to it, since it is said that he let us make man in our image and let him rule over the earth, because these things are said simultaneously. It says, oh, it's more functional. The image is for him to rule over the earth. But really, I came up with a definition for this image of God, I call it a definition, but it's more like a functional thing that I would like to express here today. This is what I wrote. My view of the image of God: to have the fullness of God in man. To have the fullness of God in man, so that God's nature can be displayed and His plans and purposes be expressed and actualized through man. Can I say that again? To have the fullness of God in man, so that God's nature can be displayed through us. Okay? His nature can be displayed through us, and His purposes be expressed and actualized through us. He can express His purposes through us, and He can actually actualize it, make it into being. And I believe that's what the image of God means. I got this definition from actually Colossians chapter 1. If you turn to Colossians chapter 1, verse 15. The New Testament has got a lot of references to the image of God. And we're not going to go through everything, but just the important ones. Colossians 1:15 says, talking about Jesus, He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. So Jesus is the image of the God we do not see. Okay? Verse 16, for by Him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things were created by Him and for Him. He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together. And verse 18 says He's the head of the body, the church, which is us, all believers. He's the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything He might have supremacy. And look at verse 19. For God was pleased to have all His fullness dwell in Him. God was pleased to have all His fullness dwell in Jesus as a man. So Jesus was the fullness of God. He was the image of the invisible God. Why was He the image of the invisible God when He was here on earth also? Because He had the fullness of God in Him. For God was pleased to have all His fullness dwell in Him, and through Him to reconcile to Himself all things, whether things in heaven or things in heaven, by making peace through His blood shed on the cross. So Jesus had the fullness of God dwell in Him while He was here on earth. He was here on earth fully as a man, but He had the fullness of God dwell in Him. Okay, if He were God, if He was here on earth as God, He didn't need the fullness of God dwelling in Him. He was here on earth as man. In Hebrews chapter 2, chapter 4 talks about His human nature. He was just like us. But He had the fullness of God dwell in Him. So He was the image of God here on earth. That is why Jesus could say, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. So everything that Jesus did and displayed was because of the fullness of God living in Him by the Holy Spirit, that He could display the nature of God. I wrote out a definition for sin too. It says, since God intends to reflect His nature in and through us, any deviation from the standard is sin. God wants to display His image, His nature, and through us, and if that doesn't happen, through us, we are living in sin. We are falling short of God's glory. So when Adam and Eve were created, they were created perfect. Somebody asked me, why do I have the Oreo here? I said, I get hungry when I preach. I couldn't get a white cookie, but God created Adam and Eve brown. No. He created it perfect. Either man is tripartite, he's got a spirit, he lives in a body and he has a soul. Man has a spirit, he's a spiritual being, he lives in a body and he has a soul. And this cookie kind of represents that. You've got 3 sections. But when he sinned, everything was tarnished. His spirit, he was separated from God. His body, and also his soul, his mind, his emotions, everything about him was tarnished. He could not display the image of God anymore in him. He was unable to. So did man lose his image? Yeah, he could not display the nature of God anymore. He could not be who God created him to be, in his image, in his likeness, to kind of represent him here on earth. To have his fullness dwell in him and manifest wherever he goes. The fullness of God manifesting through man. That never happened after his sin. I don't know to the degree, how much of a degree he lost his image, but he lost his image. I believe he lost his image because Jesus came to restore that image. You know, some people still argue that we did not lose the image of God. But if you read some of these New Testament references, it is pretty implicit that we did. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 49. Actually, you can back up to verse 45. It says, the first man, Adam, became a living being. The last Adam, a life-giving spirit. The spiritual did not come first, but the natural, and after that the spiritual. The first man was of the dust of the earth, the second man is of heaven. As was the earthly man, so are those who are of the earth. And as of the heavenly man, so also are those of heaven. And just as we have borne the image of the earthly man, so shall we bear the image of the heavenly man. So this is something future. So shall we bear the image of the heavenly man. He's saying that in the past we bore the image of Adam. Adam bore the image of God. He lost it. Because he lost it, all his offspring started bearing Adam's image. Yeah. We became the image of Adam. And once we are born again, we have the image of Jesus. And so that's something that we see also in 2 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 4. It says, the God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so they cannot see the light of the gospel that displays the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. So we did lose that image. And 1 Corinthians, we are being transformed. 2 Corinthians 3:18 says, And we all who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory are being transformed into His image. If we're being transformed into His image, we are apparently lost it. That is why we're being transformed. So we're being transformed in His image, into His image, with ever increasing glory which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. So, what is the image of God? It's the fullness of God in us that wants to manifest the nature and the purpose and the will and everything that God has through us. That's the image of God. That's what Adam was created for. He was created so that God's nature may be manifest through him. Did we lose the image? We did lose the image as a result of sin. And now the last question I want to ask is, do we as believers have the image of God? Okay, we read Colossians chapter 1, talking about Christ is made in the image of God. Let's turn to chapter 2, verse 9.